we're going to get to the NFL. And the story of the day yesterday, Bucky, was that the Indianapolis Colts have given Jonathan Taylor and his agent permission to go out and talk to other teams and seek a trade. They are asking reportedly for a first-round pick or the equivalent, meaning several lower-round picks. And I got to be honest, but look, I like Jonathan Taylor. I think he is a top back in the league. But I think that the running back market is so depressed that I honestly don't think they're going to trade him. I think this is kind of like what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson when they told him, you can go out there and check out the market. And he did, and he found out, that the Ravens weren't the only ones that weren't going to give him $250 million fully guaranteed. And, of course, he ends up signing with the Ravens for less. Now, he got a great deal, but less than he initially was thinking. And I think this is similar. I think the Colts are thinking, look, all right, he thinks we're the only ones who won't give him this long-term deal. Let him get out there on the market and see what happens. And then, they think they can get him back. This is my thought. So I think he's going to end up playing for the Colts. I think when you look at the ankle injury, last year, he wasn't bad, 4.5 yards a carry, but it wasn't up to what he had done in his first 2 years. And, of course, he gets hurt. And then you look at on top of giving up draft picks and stuff for him, you also are going to have to, he's going to want a long-term contract, somewhere in the range of $12 to $15 million a year. And I don't see a team doing that. So, because you're going to inherit the same problems that the Colts have right now as far as him not being happy if he doesn't get that deal. So that's my take on it. I would love it to be different for Taylor. I think what's happening to running backs is unfortunate, but it is happening and it is real. And that's how I see this thing playing out, Bucky.
Yeah, so, I mean, the challenge that you have if you're Jonathan Taylor is just that what the market has kind of put out there. So the market has put out there that unless you're Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, you're not going to get that kind of money. That $16, $17 million at running back annually is not coming. The market
and would
is going
they
to be,
even get that at this point?
I don't know if they would get it because
Yeah.
I know because when Christian McCaffrey signed his deal, he was immediately hurt thereafter. Prior to that, he had been solid. He had been a member of the 1,100 club where he had 1,000 yards, 100 receptions, 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards, all of those things because you have to be a factor in the passing game. Well, what has happened for your traditional running backs, you guys that do it primarily on the ground, Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry and those guys, you're talking about $10 to $12 million is kind of the range. And you just have to understand that's what the market bears out. And for Jonathan Taylor, I think the frustration is Jim Irsay seems adamant he ain't going to pay him regardless. Like, regardless of what you do, I appreciate your service. You're making $4 million this year. After that, we're moving on. The trick will be, what are the Colts trying to get in return for Jonathan Taylor? Because if they don't value him willing to sign him to a long-term deal, then how much are they thinking that they're going to get back? If they're demanding a first-round pick, I can see the frustration. Like, wait a minute, you think I'm worth a first-round pick, but you don't want to pay me the money. What is it? I think they will look at maybe getting something similar to what the Niners gave up to get McCaffrey, second and third and fourth round picks, a collection of them that maybe add up to a first-round pick in value. But I think it'd be hard-pressed to get a first-round pick.
Do you see, like, if you're put on your GM hat, you are in the front office, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, and Derrick Henry. 4 best running backs in the league last year. None of them made the playoffs. If you're running another team, and you know what you have to give up and what he's going to want long term, are you signing up for that? Like, there's been talk about Miami. And Taylor is better than Raheem Mostert, and Jeff Wilson Jr. But those guys are pretty good. I mean, they're good enough, particularly when you have that receiving core and you're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And they've shown in the past they can run the ball well and help a team go deep into play. Heck, they helped the Niners get to the Super Bowl. So do you think if you're running another team, are you signing up for that?
Depends on how good the quarterback is. My belief is the better the quarterback, the lesser the need to have a A-level running back. The more mediocre the quarterback, the more important it is to have an A-level running back to offset the pressure. So in every situation, a lot of it depends on how do you value the quarterback. Some of the questions or the bewilderment when it came to the New York Giants signing Daniel Jones to his blockbuster deal. If you ask defensive coordinators, are you most concerned with Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley? They always say Saquon Barkley. If you look at how that team functioned, Saquon Barkley was the straw that stirred the drink more so than Daniel Jones, even though Daniel Jones was better. But remember, he only had 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. It wasn't like he was killing them, through the air. And so a lot of it depends on that. And running backs will be frustrated. It's just been proven time and time again that you can find guys, and there's a surplus of running backs on the market that can give you spot duty. And even though I'll say there's a huge difference between a running back that can get you 1,500 and 1,000, how much are you willing to compensate for that difference between good and great? That's where the running back market is. People are not willing to pay premium prices for great when they can pay bargain basement prices for good. And so until that changes, running backs are going to be stuck in the middle.
Yeah, I'm with you. And obviously, when we were coming up, the running back was the glory and glamour position. And so this is hard for people to wrap their heads around running backs being essentially the lowest paid position in the league outside of kickers and punters. But I think it began, Bucky, when, teams start going to 2 running backs. The bell cows became few and far between. The guy that was going to be the one running back the whole game, a la Derrick Henry, get you 20 to 25 carries a game. When that started decreasing, obviously their value started decreasing. The passing game has become more prominent with the rules changes as well. And there's always been positions that weren't paid in value. It was usually a center or a guard, and I shouldn't say value, but where they didn't pay a ton of money for, and we didn't really think much about. Hey, that's just is what it is. That's the position you play. Well, now that it's hit running back, it's not fair because that's the one position where, in many cases, probably most cases, by the time Bucky they get through that rookie deal, and then when you could franchise them for another year or two, by that time, almost all of them have seen their better years. There's a few. You look at an Emmitt Smith, a Walter Payton, a handful that had long, great careers. But even some of the Hall of Famers, after that, by that 7th year, their best days were behind them. And I would love to say, man, they should change the rules and enable a running back to be able to get, out of that deal after 2 or 3 years. But I can't. It's hard to see them doing that for one position. And I think they'll look at it like, you know what? Again, this is how it was for centers or guards or safeties at one point. Now it's just come to your doorstep. So you got to deal with it.
Unfortunately, that is what it is. And what we're seeing, and look, it's a market shift in a few different positions. What we're seeing, and I'm using the $20 million club as kind of the line of demarcation, meaning the $20 million club is what used to be quarterback money. And the positions that are clocking over $20 million are as follows. You have the quarterbacks that are on their own category. Yeah. You have receivers who are making $20 million or more. You have pass rushers who are making $20 million or more. And by pass rushers, I mean inside and outside. So edge rushers and defensive tackles that have sack ability, they're getting their money. You have premier pass protectors, your left tackles, your top tackles, and some of your guards are over that. But, Chris, that's it. You only have 2 cornerbacks that are making $20 million or more. Everybody else falls outside of that. So unless you are a passer, a playmaker, meaning a wide receiver, a pass protector, a tackle, or a pass rusher, you're not getting big money. That's just what it is. It's a passing league, and they're paying people that impact the passing game on offense and defense.
Now, do you think that – because I can't remember who our guest was. It was Sean King, former quarterback. You remember he played at Tulane in college. He brought up a great point. He said they should – and I've said this for years. that I think, like, I get quarterback is the number one position, and it's the most important, and it's incredibly difficult. I think it's probably I think it's the most difficult thing to do in sports, is play quarterback at a high level. But I do think that the gap between what quarterbacks make and what everybody else makes, I think is too big. Because as great as the quarterback is, he can't do much without a good offensive line in most cases, or receivers or whatever. And what do you think of the notion of paying players not by position, but how great they are? If Derrick Henry is the best running back in the league, then he can make more than, say, some of these lower level starting quarterbacks. Now, what do you think about that? And is the reason maybe it isn't happening now or won't happen, is it the franchise tag? Is that why the league essentially goes by position versus just quality of the player regardless of position?
Yeah, the franchise tag certainly sets the standard for what you can max out at, because the franchise tag is the average of the top 5 players at a given position. And so until you get an uptick in the players at your position making high dollar, then the tag value doesn't go up. And so what smart general managers do, and this is what happens with running backs. So let's say the tag for running backs is $10 million. Well, they're saying, okay, if I tag you twice, it's $10 million plus the next year has to be 120%. Okay, so now it goes to 11, maybe 12 million. Okay, so that's 2 year, 22 million. I know what that is if I put you on a franchise tag. So if I'm going to give you a deal, I'm not going to go much above that, because that's what it is. And so you have the option of maybe signing a 2 year, $24, $26 million deal, or playing on the tag. But I'm not going to pay you $30 million when I know I have you on a franchise tag at 2 years at that money. And so that's what happens, and that's what the thing is. And we saw it when Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins and those guys were willing to play on the franchise tag. The franchise tag kind of sets the floor for where the negotiation begins, just like with Lamar Jackson. When you can tally up those franchise tags, 2 or 3, you know, okay, well, here's where I have to be, because at a minimum on the franchise tag, I'm getting this money. The negotiation starts at where the franchise tag ends.